say that it's not about replacing one system with another. And keeping the same power dynamics, the same non-dialogue, the same non-participation, if I may say. But we speak about a change in the system, so a change in the energy system as a whole. So, and that is where, like, open dialogue, and I read a little bit about you and what you do. Open dialogue is one of the models that will ensure ownership of individuals and of communities for this transition to happen. And we do have already enormous amount of experiences all around the world of energy communities for renewable energy systems that show that only this is the way to make this energy system based on renewables sustainable in a longer term. Shall I continue? Do you want me to stop?
Yeah, actually, I was going to address another question because you mentioned a very interesting point, linking it back to Open Dialogue Foundation itself. Maybe how can dialogue-based approaches help maybe in fixing this gap of communication between us, different stakeholders and policymakers? So maybe, since you mentioned an interesting point.
I think it helps in a way, exactly for what I was just saying. It helps because I think, for instance, maybe I'm making an example, like in Europe, right? I know about Europe, so forgive me if I don't know much about the other regions of the world. But I just want to give you this example. I mean, the energy communities are more and more like, are still, I would say, are many, but are still suffering about being very much ismodel experiences, like in a wider energy system that is still based on fossil fuels, right? So a model such open dialogue will help to connect those experiences, because while we say that the transition and the shift we want to see is a global shift, actually we also know that it's only sustainable and possible if it's rooted and embodied at community and a local level. So a way, I mean, sometimes also slogans help. You know, we always say that the energy communities are the translation of a global mission to a local applicable reality. So I think this filling the gaps between like decision makers, youth, science representatives, it means dialogue. And it is in dialogue to build ownership at all levels of the model that we want to put forward.
Yeah, that's actually where you mentioned a lot of interesting points, which made me think of you as maybe young, I would say youth, climate activists representing youth. Maybe also the same question, how do you think like we can bridge this gap of communication between us stakeholders and, I mean, from your own perspective as a youth activist? Delegate.
Actually, I was going to follow up with Chiara's what you said. When we talk about energy transition, it's not like, it's a transformation of the system. It's not like from one thing to another thing. And actually, when we are talking about just transitions, we talk about like the factor of justice and also transitioning in a more equitable way. And actually, science can support that too. By supporting it, I mean, if you look at IPCC, we talk about increasing dialogues for vulnerable communities, for indigenous people. And it has been proven by science that this is the way that we can have effective climate solution, effective, better futures. It was actually mentioned by the head of IPCC in one of the high ministerial events that happened last month in France or in September, that the way forward to solve climate change is just transition, because just transition includes mitigation and adaptation at the same time.
Yeah. Indeed. You mentioned a very interesting point at the end. And I love the fact that like you moved around and you linked it back to adaptation, which is also one of the main discussed topic in the negotiations. So that's a very interesting topic. Thank you so much. Maybe moving on to the representatives, as has been mentioned, maybe since we heard from like different backgrounds, how we can get along, the open dialogue, maybe how can these outcomes of this, like of the open dialogue, can be transmitted to the public? Like, how can we spread awareness? How can we convince people that, yes, energy transition should be a solution? So sometimes as even activists, we find it hard to just, advocate for energy transition because the public cannot get it. And that was an outcome of an open dialogue. So maybe how can we fix that and communicate it easily?
Well, I say India Water Foundation actually hosts a lot of programs.
Yeah.
top-down programs. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And effective dialogue is crucial for sound adaptation strategies, basically. And because it's helped build trust, drive actions, and create a collective sense of ownership over the monumental task of eventually building resilience and mitigating climate change. It also sounds obvious, but all of us working on climate adaptation, this is also part of. And policymakers and international funders, community leaders, and implementing partners need to ensure local people are informed, consulted, involved, and empowered. We need strong leadership to ensure this is incorporated into decision-making. Participatory dialogue approaches can be ensured, and adaptation actions success and should not be treated as a tick box exercise. This may mean adding additional steps to your project design and implementation process, but it is worth. If we are to reduce our vulnerability to climate change, to build trust, climate dialogue must be transparent in their agendas, discussions, and outcomes, and must function in a consistent and predictable manner. Policies, goals, and timelines concerning data sharing, confidentiality, online presence, and the dialogue participants, governing structures, process should be made public. Dialogue should bring together a wide variety of public, private, and civil society stakeholders able to integrate global challenges with a regional, environmental, economic needs, inclusive dialogues, which will be needed both at national and sub-national level with effective coordination between them to be effectively communicated. It required a drive for awareness within the climate dialogue process. This included respectful attention to the varying options of the stakeholders, as well as knowledge sharing and building of a common understanding of issue and opportunity among stakeholder groups. Awareness building is a continuous process that should occur at national and sub-regional level as well. So science is a tool for that.
Actually, you mentioned very interesting points regarding collaboration, inclusive dialogue, having everyone included all together in one table, which is why, just to ensure that everyone is actually not dead, I want to hand out the floor to the audience also to kind of engage in our panel. Everyone is like, oh God, oh, we were not there. yeah, you guys will be actually also answering some questions in here. I would love to hand out the floor to you and ask you, how many of you here have done an open dialogue with their own governments? I mean, that's sometimes way too much, but maybe stakeholders have done, at least made a discussion, a dialogue together. How many of you had this done? Thank you so much, yeah. Okay, any hands? Thank you.
Try to.
Hi, I'll introduce myself. I'm Shweta, Chief Functionary, India Water Foundation. Since we are part of the policy making process as well with the government, being in different committees, our president is there, and also are implementing it at ground with the grassroots level communities. So we are part of both the things, the top-down and bottom-up approach both. So therein we also question the government while we are with stakeholders. We organize workshops and meetings, and also we are making the policies also with the government, trying to bring the perspective of the grassroots communities there. So it's a two-way process which is happening till now. Let's see.
Where are you from, just for people to know?
We are from India.
Yes, perfect.
Delhi.
That's good. Is it the case for everyone? Yes. Any other hands? Regarding the open dialogue that is actually supposed to happen. Yes. The one who did. We caught you. Yes, share with us, please. So from Asia to Africa.
To Africa, yeah. My name is Sunday. I was a team lead for Open Dialogue Cameroon. I didn't want to get the mic because your question was about the government, our engagement. We actually had 2 dialogues. One was at the level of the grassroots, because we felt that it was important to have all voices.
Nice.
If I'm here today, I'm not representing myself, I'm representing the communities we are serving, the grassroots committees, smallholder farmers, the pastoralist groups who participated in the grassroots dialogue. But we also organized a second dialogue at the level of Yaoundé, where we have the representative of the Ministry of Environment.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I think he was very open during the discussions.
Interesting.
But sometimes we observe that when you engage with government officials, they try as much to defend their government positions. They make you understand that everything is working so well, they are doing everything that they can at their level. But I believe that when we shared the experiences that we've had, the information we gathered from the various stakeholders, we're actually able to open up. And I think one area that we actually discussed on, that we agreed on, was to review, especially on issues of land rights, because we are working with smallholder farmers and we understand that they have a lot of challenges when they cannot access land. Imagine a farmer who cannot access land, you cannot cultivate. A grazer who cannot access land cannot graze. They can't even access water. So these are some of the issues that we discussed. I understand that it's going to be very difficult. Even before our dialogue, we had this consultation with the local representatives, and we actually had this issue on the table. And there was a lot of resistance because they feel that it's going to be costly, it's going to be ABC. But I feel that if we must win the fight against climate change, we must ensure that we are pulling everyone along, right? We are pulling everyone along. We are bringing all the local communities. If we choose to work with certain group of persons, then we will fight another crisis.
True. Actually, this actually made me just rethink. And thank you so much. I mean, that's interesting that the ministers were okay with everything, and that's something you don't see everywhere. And in Africa specifically, because I'm also from Africa and I know how it works. So thank you so much for sharing with us. Maybe handing it to, we would love another continent. And if you can keep it brief a bit, because I think we're on a bit of time.
Yes, I'll try.
Yeah. Yes.
Does it work? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I am from Tromsø, which is in the Arctic region. And we work also with just transition. So we have a pavilion here which has that as a topic. So I hope you'll all come by. I work with a project where, as you said, we translate these policies into the local communities and work with how does the community meet their inhabitants. And we showcase different, in the pavilion and also in the research, we try different methods of making the businesses, the local businesses and youth meet each other and discuss what are the issues in our municipality regarding sustainable issues and also transition. And we also have a method for dialogue in when the indigenous people of the Arctic region, the Sapmi, they do reindeer herding, and they all come in conflict with windmills. So we have to find a way that this green transition that we all want is done in a way that doesn't interfere with their right to traditional herding and work. So it's a very interesting field, exactly that translation from global policy to the local communities where there are different angles and perspectives to take in account.
Thank you so much for sharing with us. That's interesting because sometimes when we talk about energy transition, young people be like, we're still far from that. No need to have an interest on this, but let's just move to the other problems. So the fact that you mentioned that this has been addressed in your community and it has been discussed, that's a pretty interesting thing to know as everyone here. Thank you so much for sharing. Maybe moving on to a final one last person, if possible, to share how maybe they're having this dialogues going on Middle East. Anyone want to maybe jump in this one? Ah, there is someone. Okay, awesome. I didn't see you, sorry. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
I was hesitant to speak because I really do not claim to have an authoritative voice on this context. I'm originally Canadian, but I did a bit of research in Lebanon. And if anyone here is from Lebanon, I apologize.
I do study in Lebanon.
Okay, I
Yeah.
apologize if anything I say is not
No
accurate.
worries.
These are just my own observations, but I'm not an authoritative voice on this context. But yeah, because it's another region of the world. So when I was doing research there on basically the lives of informal waste pickers and specifically some of their socioeconomic and health vulnerabilities, I was working with an NGO that was in conversation with the local government around moving towards a more circular economy and improving the solid waste management practices in that part of the city. Something interesting that I noted, which seemed to exist in this context but may not be the case, or may be the case in many other places too, is that the governance is very decentralized. So there's various different neighborhoods of Beirut that have all different communities, and each of the governments seem to have jurisdiction over exclusively those communities, but not just jurisdiction, but they only seem to really take an interest in those certain communities that they are specifically overseeing. And so what I found was that as much as I thought what was happening was so great and it needed to be scaled, to do that in the context of a community that has such fragmented governments would require really working individually through multiple local jurisdictions, as opposed to the approach that we initially thought would work, which was, working through one jurisdiction and assuming that that could be scaled more broadly. You have to work through individual jurisdictions in these decentralized governance contexts, especially where the communities are very fragmented and they only, certain governments only have legitimacy with certain populations, for example. So that was just something unique and interesting that I noticed there, and I think it applies probably to just transition-related initiatives, in that you really have to adapt them to the governance context, and sometimes working at a national or federal level is not always the best approach when you have very disparate and heterogeneous communities.
True. Actually, you mentioned this, and I'm now studying in Lebanon, so I kind of really can relate to that a lot. And especially when it comes to having dialogues, at some point or another, you're going to find, yes, I would say few youth involved, but not everyone, not all the backgrounds involved. And especially in some countries where they do have a lot of backgrounds, where they do have a lot of beliefs. So not having just one individual involved will kind of make the discussion or the dialogue itself kind of not that stable. So thank you so much actually for bringing this out at this point. Appreciate it. Now we would love to come back to our panel discussion, and I'm sure maybe our panelists enjoyed the discussions. Hello over there. How is it? Yeah, so basically I'm sure you guys enjoyed the what our audience just shared, because maybe some of it is unexpected. So I would love just briefly, each one of you just comment on what they have discussed, starting with you, Mr.
Yes, sure. I mean, for me there are, so thanks so much for sharing. And maybe to be very brief, I think there are two things that I see across all these experiences that you are sharing that I would like to highlight and that I share, I personally believe that are crucial pillars in this work on making the energy transition possible. The first one, I mean, looking at the case that you presented from Cameroon, if I get it well, but also from the Arctic region. I mean, for me, both the access to land and or protection of certain territories and certain traditions is really a key element that we need to address with this immense, as we would like to see, rollout of renewables. And actually energy communities and citizens' participations is the only option we have to make sure that there is both social and environmental guardrails on this rollout. So that's my first point. And second point, very quickly, because we didn't mention so far, I just want to put it out there, money. And I think it relates a lot to what you said about, I mean, to make this transition possible, we need to equip local authorities.
True,
So the money need to go, and the support, the financial support from governments need to go at the local level, both in terms of infrastructures and you know, really like material, but also in terms of skilling for local authorities workers, basically, to make sure that this rollout is possible.
Thank you so much. That's a very good reflection on what has been said. Appreciate it. Moving on to you, maybe before moving to you, Mr. Kumar, I would love to welcome our panelist. He was a bit busy and taken, but thank you so much for eventually joining us. Mr. Stefan Sevares, right? Sorry if I misspelled your name. Thank you so much again for joining us. So we have been briefly discussing energy transition, adaptation, the engagement of youth and the collaboration that should happen with everyone. And now maybe you have listened as well to what has been discussed in here, maybe a quick reflection from you of what has been said, your comment on what has been said by our audience in here.
Yes, sorry to be late. So you know that everyone is late, in fact, regarding
Yeah, a quick
climate
introduction about yourself, sorry,
Oh,
because
sorry.
maybe they
Yes,
don't.
So
Yeah.
I'm Steven Savaris. I'm the co-founder of Saving Our Planet, an NGO dedicated to climate solutions. And what we do are basically action-driven projects like tree planting, petitions to exit coal, or editing or helping editors publish books about climate education. And it's really a multi-dimensional dialogue that we're trying to set up, and that every COP helps really strengthen. And so it's becoming at the same time more and more complex and more urgent, because we also need results. So there is always this feeling of urgency that is kind of detrimental to the serenity of the debate. And there is a balance to be found at the international level between the necessity to get results quickly and the need to take some time to align expectations and interests.
Thank you so much for sharing and for reflecting back on what has been stated. Because maybe we're running out of time, we would love to do a quick wrap up, but maybe giving you, I think going back to you again, maybe what do you think, like as a final question to wrap up the whole discussion, and then we will go back to other panelists to reflect back. Maybe as a final question that I would love to address to all of you would be, how maybe do dialogue enhance the coordination and the collaboration needed to address issues that overlap across different domains and different regions, probably? Yes, maybe if you want to take the floor.
Yeah, yes, sure. So, yeah, well, dialogue is the first step of climate action, in fact.
It's by open dialogue, literally.
So really, this is what we started doing actually in the years 2010, when there are a lot of people who were actually denying climate change. Hopefully, most of that work is done, and we won't have to do it again, although in some countries it is still a problem. So dialogues is absolutely necessary to bring everyone, or at least 85% of the people, that's what we need on the side of climate change mitigation. And then the second thing is, so there is also a technical dialogue about solutions, about climate engineering and so on. And then the third dimension is really the societal dialogue about responsibilities, issues of coordination, and where to act first, because the resources are not infinite, and allocation of resource in the end. And there is a very nice negotiation going on, and with interesting results on the first day of COP yesterday, that shows that after years of dialogue, we can actually achieve something. So yeah, I think this is encouraging. Of course, it's always too slow, but we must emphasize on the results that have been obtained so far.
Thank you so much. That's so interesting, because as I think youth, probably that's what we want to hear. But maybe just like one more point that I want to address with you. What do you think maybe of having youth more involved in decision and policy making when it comes to kind of us addressing these problems? Maybe a brief answer to that would be amazing.
Well, there is a negative part of the answer, which is the youth have tendency to criticize, and that's good. But if we only criticize, it's not enough. So then I would like to bring the youth on the side of the propositions. Okay, what do we want to do together? And it's a multi-dimensional, multi-generational undertaking. What can we do, all the countries, all the generations together, to really speed up the pace of climate action?
Thank you so much. Are you guys satisfied? All right, we'll think about it. Thank you so much again. Appreciate your answer. Maybe moving on to you, Ms. Chiara, I would love to ask you maybe, like, the same question exactly. What can be the contributions that like we can all do together, different stakeholders, different policymakers, and different, I would say, youth climate activists? How can we kind of together build up and I would say enhance the level of engagement on the ground?
Yeah, as I say, since our inception, we are working on the same. Some of our significant concepts that have emerged from our past program. We are need for ecosystem-specific and cultural-specific approach to economic development, participatory, legal and instrumental mechanism for development, and the importance of grassroots implementation, traditional knowledge system, and just and equitable governance for global environmental problems. We believe dialogues and partnerships are at the core of the sustainable development, and highlight some of the organizations like high-level policy dialogue we had in the past. So, so to conclude, strong cross-sectoral dialogues have their strength that they can harness the competencies and the qualities of different sectors and thereby help to solve complex societal challenges while creating shared value for all. Dialogue enables strong personal relations, alignment and trust, and it is a process that allows people to share their perspectives and experiences with one another about different, difficult to make better decisions on the ground decision-making process that involve all stakeholders and explores all options. So therefore, we can rightly say that meaningful participation and open dialogues are key to effective collaboration involving all sectors.
Thank you so much for your answer. Appreciate that. Moving on to you, Ms. Chiara, I would love to hear from you as well, the same thing. Maybe how all together as youth have this kind of collaborations with you and maybe like at least enhance like I would say our participation in different domains and in different regions as well.
Yes, I think a lot has been already just said. So maybe I pitch a call and a concrete things we can do. I think that we are all here at COP28. Our governments are going to negotiate what is now called the Global Goal for Renewables. So I think this is important for us and for you, as I don't consider myself as a youth, yes, but for all of us, youth and a little bit less young, to engage in this discussion, because as what we said earlier, like if we leave to decision makers to only like have like this declaration and pledges at a very broad level, there is no guarantee that this will work and that this will make sure that the transition is just, fair, and supported and long-term sustainable. So I would say, like, please do engage in these days, because there is nobody else than ourselves in our local community, in our local reality, that can raise potential risk, can raise like potential leverage points on making sure that the transition could happen and could happen also fast.
Yeah, thank you so much for calling to action at the end. That was a very good way to, I would say, provide a closing remark, which is all for us, calling us to action. Appreciate that from you. And of course, moving us to our young the panelists in here, maybe what would be also your answer in this regard, and especially take it from youth perspective.
Yeah, sure. We're talking about open dialogues and coordinations, right? So one thing I want to say is like definitely international corporations. That is, we have to have top down and bottom up. We have so many people talking about what they are doing in their countries. You know, like different projects have to be customized to that local, to fit the local community. So open dialogue can foster, different communities having better understanding and then better, more equitable way to move forward. And also climate change itself, it's a transboundary issues. Even within climate science, speaking from a scientist and youth point of view, we, like scientists, we do things in a very narrow field. So even within scientist community, we have to communicate among each other. I don't think we have time to address this part too much, but feel free to talk to me about science. I think science has to be used in the right way in order to make better policy. Yeah.
I love how this goes with the transition, and then Dr. Stefani was agreeing, and the same with Dr. Kumar. I appreciate you all for having this amazing, I would say, plenary. I'm sure like it was so fruitful for everyone. And of course now we would love to open the platform for you guys to ask your questions, maybe address your comments, reflect on any of what has been stated just at the last part. So maybe anyone interested in addressing anything, questions? Yes, please. Can you hand the mic, please? The mic, please. Yeah. Be loud.
Yeah. Hello. I was wondering whether you can share your experiences on how we can safeguard open dialogues between members of the same community or movement with some cultural differences, gender, the differences like that. So basically we're the same, but our background is a bit difficult or like different with each other. So how would you address it in your, from your experience?
Yeah. Does any one of the panelists want to address this question?
Yeah, I mean, I can give it a try. Like,
Floor is yours.
I mean, I think it's a very important question because we say open dialogue, but I think there is no one size fits all. So we need to test and to try. And so in my experience, I mean, I'm working with a network of more than 200 organizations, only in Europe, but I can assure you there are a lot of differences culturally and also way of working and all of that. So I think the most important point and the premises, I will say, is to set up a very clear and open process. I think this is the most important, I would say, in terms of the change maker, to make sure like that you don't run into assumptions, into judgment as well, and yeah, I would say clear process, even if sometimes we don't have enough time for a clear process. I think this is the price we need to pay.
Sure. Thank you so much. Anyone want to maybe jump in, or all is good? I hope that's a thumbs up from you. Thank you so much for addressing your question, and thank you so much for reflecting on that. Maybe one more last question, if anyone want to address anything? Comment? Yes, please. Throw the mic. No, don't throw it. I'm just kidding.
No, I just had a comment on the question now.
Yeah.
And I think we had a workshop yesterday on negotiations and how to meet people with stakeholders with different values, and one thing we talked about that was finding a mechanism for talking about values and what you're not willing to compromise, and be open about that, and find substitutes that is not like I pay you out, but we feel, okay, this is what is important, we can satisfy this value in this or this and this way, and have a very constructive dialogue rooted in those values. And values is not very concrete, but it can be if you connect them to the project, what's it called? Attributes, yeah, the project attributes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Maybe if anyone want to reflect back. Rather than that, I would love to say thank you so much all for attending this plenary, and of course not to forget our speakers for being part of this amazing panelists, for providing us with your insights, your fruitful discussion. We learned a lot. We will apply it, and you also learned a lot from us. Of course, again, thank you so much, Ms. Chiara, Dr. Abid Kumar, Stefan, Dr. Stefan, and also Dr. Xia Shun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry I mispronounced that. But I kept on calling you the youth climate activist, that's why you represent us. So thank you so much again for all of your amazing discussions and insights. And of course, this won't be the last one. We will always follow up with our dialogues as promised. And we can't wait to see what will happen at this scope. Looking forward for the outcomes. Appreciate it one more time. Thank you all for your amazing time. Moving on to Susanna. Finally, she was waiting so bad. Over to Susanna for her to start with the presentation. So here you go.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so this event was supposed to have a little bit of a different structure, but I'm really happy that we are finally here to also present about the work that we have done on the open dialogues on climate change. And actually, Selma, you will still have to come here because you are going to speak about your event, right? And so,
I hope I can take the request.
yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
So, I don't know how we do this. Maybe someone has to. Okay, yes.
Yeah, yes.
Oh, I can check.
Excuse me?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay. So this will be a presentation of this year's edition of the Open Dialogues on Climate Change project, which is already its third edition. The first one happened in 2021. Then we had another one last year, and this year is the third one, and absolutely the most successful one so far. We are really happy that so many people have participated in our open dialogue, and I'm really happy about this side event actually also being an open dialogue. Thank you so much, Selma, by the way, for moderating the panel, and thanks to all the speakers, and thanks to everyone who provided their contributions. Yes. And I guess now we can move on to our presentation. And we will start with a bit of a global summary of our project. So we had 57 events organized this year, which we are really proud of because so far, yes, thank you.
I mean, make some noise!
Because so far our record number was 13 events that happened in our first edition, so we are really happy that we are growing. We had teams around 4 continents, 24 teams that organized at least one event this year, and they were coming from 20 different countries. And here you can see a few key themes that were addressed in the dialogues. We made a bit of a summary to see which ones of them are repeated the most times. And you can see that, well, maybe it's not very unexpected. The one that appeared the most is dialogue, stakeholder engagement and participation, as well as climate education, training and awareness. So I think we had some of this covered also in the discussion today. I think it's definitely the basis of everything else that we are doing, also in our foundation. So we are really happy to see that this is coming up, and I hope that it will also increasingly come up in all the political discussions, high-level discussions, also like here at COP. Then we see youth and children, wonderful, that Selma has talked about a lot as well. And also we see partnerships and international cooperation, vulnerable communities, also connecting to indigenous and local knowledge and promoting this kind of knowledge. And then we had a lot of points on policy and governance, as a lot of our teams really focused on creating some specific recommendations also for their governments that we are going to talk about in a minute. And then we see the topic of adaptation and resilience, which also was part of our panel today and is becoming increasingly important in the current situation that we have in the world. And here are a few ideas that have come up from our teams. It's really a summary because we've had so many of them and so many wonderful points. We're going to mention some of them in a moment again, but of course we cannot mention all of them. So if you want to learn more about all the details of our events, we are publishing them on our social media of the Open Dialogues International Foundation. So definitely feel free to have a look at that. But here we can see a few ideas. For example, capacity building programs, integration of local perspectives in politics on climate resilience, defining a just energy transition, very interesting in the context of the negotiations on the just transition work program that I was following today. We'll see how that goes. Investing in local renewable energy. Again, the local aspect is very important for our teams. Establishing support networks for youth. Yay, of course, youth empowerment. Promoting sustainable practices in agriculture and food storage. I think this is also a really important topic, especially locally for a lot of our countries, as most of our countries were developing countries. Actually, most of our teams were in Africa, so I think this was a really good opportunity to see their local context and their local solutions and also the issues that they have and raise more awareness about it. And again, here we see focus on food security and ecosystem conservation, as well as increasing climate knowledge in rural communities, which is also very important. And here we go to the presentation of the events from different teams. And we will start with Selma. Yay. Come here again.
Should I remove this or? Do whatever you want. I want one that I can. Okay.
Waiting for you.
Okay, so hi everyone again. It's me again. I'm sure you missed me, you know. So as you can see, I'm Selma Bishbish and I'm from Algeria. I'm a social and climate youth activist. I'm a founder of an NGO, environmental NGO. It's actually the first environmental Anglophone NGO in Algeria called Together for Blue and Green. And I'm also a co-founder of a regional network, maybe some of you have heard of it, called MENA Youth Network. And we're here at COPE. We're having our own side events hosted, so yay. Okay, now let's go back to the slides. So, of course, with the International Foundation with the International Open Dialogue Foundation, we were able to implement this with the collaboration we had. It was so interesting because, you know, we had our own limited time. We were like, we need to be perfect at this, and we need to show the world that Algeria's got stuff. And we had, actually. So as you can see, we organized a full side event. It had a panel discussion. We had a panel discussion. We had a workshop, and we had also networking session where we drafted proposals, and these proposals were submitted at the African Assembly in Kenya, Nairobi. So for the first time, Algeria had their own youth, at least contributing with their own proposals at least in a continental conference where declarations and proposals were submitted. So it was our own first time having this happen, and that was just amazing. It was through this event. I would say the best part of this event was having it with amazing people. It was most of the time funny. Most of us were shaking because we didn't sleep enough. It wasn't because we were stressed. It's just we didn't sleep enough. But we managed to smile, at least. As you can see, we hosted it with the American Embassy in collaboration with the American Embassy. Given the fact that I'm one of their best alumnus, I guess. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just one of their alumnus, and they welcomed me to host something related to environment, climate change, because the Algerian youth wanted to know more about this. So we asked, they welcomed, and we went there and we implemented and we proved that what we talk about is always the right thing to do and to implement. And we proved that, I would say. So as you can see, it was at the US Embassy. We had networking session where we drafted proposals with amazing team. We had collaboration with the American Institute, also World Learning Algeria. And then we hosted a workshop. Oh, why the picture where I'm speaking is not here? Okay, it's okay. But I was speaking, all right? I was speaking here. I was delivering my own workshop, and it was about climate justice. And it was actually, we introduced it as a movement that people need to know about, and not just as a term. So it was easier for them to know what climate justice is all about and how to kind of try to take actions after. And it's not about just knowing stuff and not then implementing them, but it's about taking the action after you learn something. And the last thing was the plenary. We had it with a startup owner. He's a young individual. He has his own agro startup. He does with agriculture, and it was really interesting because we don't see always youth really getting engaged in agriculture as a sector, as a neglected sector. We had also academia representatives and also NGOs founders, other NGOs founders, also environmental ones. So it was pretty interesting to have this discussion all with them and get the questions from the audience. And eventually, I would say it was a successful side event, and we ended up just having a small booth where we were taking pictures and eating snacks, which also the other picture is not here. But that was it, I guess, for our side event. Maybe if you have any questions on how we did it, how it was, please do not hesitate. Thank you so much. That was the Algerian representative.
Thank you so much. We will now move on to the next teams, but once again, congratulations on your wonderful event. Yeah, let's move on. Okay, so we have a few other events that we would like to present from our friends that are actually not here, but we would like to still show their work because we think it's really valuable. So for example, here we have an event that happened in Cameroon, and a few of the ideas, solutions, recommendations, or reflections that came out of this event. So as you can see, for example, they talked about the importance of community engagement and information sharing. Again, connecting to our main topics that were repeated the most, education, dialogue, and basically connecting with each other. We can see that this is just all around all the different discussions, and I think it should be, and this should be the direction where we should go. But we also see a focus on smallholder farmers, providing technical assistance for them, as well as creating environmental clubs, local adaptation initiatives, and capacity building programs. We also see planting trees, which is still a very important activity, and we can see a bit of that on the pictures too. Food security, again, a very important thing. And women and youth, very important concept, which I wish that we could see it being mentioned more in the actual COP negotiations that we are having here, not only in those side event rooms, as well as all of those local perspectives and communities. So this is what we are doing with our open dialogues, trying to showcase them and raise awareness around them. And then we have another event in Zimbabwe with some other ideas, again, increasing knowledge, but on the benefits of thermal composting. So this was a really local topic that they had. Again, they focus also on promoting organic agriculture, vulnerability, disaster risk frameworks, and the role of agroecology, making agriculture more climate resilient. So we are really happy that such topics are coming up in those events, because this really shows that people can organize them according to their local context, and then we can bring them here and show everyone what happened there. So they also talked about some training for students, for farmer groups as well, holding climate change awareness dialogues in schools and colleges, and again focusing on food security and food conservation, which I think it's becoming an increasingly important topic, especially for African countries. Here we have another theme for Zimbabwe because we had two of them, but their event was again a bit different. They focused on teaching on climate knowledge in rural communities about pollution, greenhouse gases, changes in seasons, and impacts on food security. Again, we see implementing awareness programs and using social media platforms. This is something we see for the first time. I think also an important point that can help a lot in advocacy and in sharing in sharing the most important ideas that are sometimes not reflected here in the discussions between the world leaders. They aim to close the gaps in climate knowledge and increase youth participation in climate action. And they also created a very specific plan to focus on climate education in their own local community. And then we have a team from Italy. They hosted an event online, which was called Climate Social Forum, and it was an online open Talanoa discussion on climate and social challenges. They talked about both policy and implementation and focused on the vision of a just transition. So they addressed topics such as education and civil society involvement and empowerment, and then they also talked about sustainable development goals, adaptation, and providing international frameworks for all these topics. And some of the recommendations were, again, using social media for reaching out to youth. I think also for youth to reach out to adults and all the others. And developing strategies for achieving goals through collaborative efforts and capacity building. Then we had another event in Ghana where they talked about education again. They made a recommendation to host conferences to bring knowledge for participants and have pledges to safeguard the environment. They talked about topics such as fish smoking and the dangers it poses, and teaching safer practices. So that was a really practical workshop that they had. And they also aimed to reach out to some young entrepreneurs and teach them about the importance of recycling. Yeah, and as you see, welcome them to their capacity building program. And again, teaching the importance of planting trees and gardening and all the nature-based solutions. I think that's also a very important topic that we have here. And then another event happened in Bangladesh with school students. So the main topic here was education, and especially at young age. As you can see, we had 10 to 12-year-old children. You can see them here. They are indeed very enthusiastic, just as it says on the slide. So they taught them about topics such as history of climate and different species, ecosystems diversity, including marine biodiversity, climate change adaptation, restoration, and the climate duty for youth. The involvement of youth and the need for them to act for climate change, and also the ways in which they can effectively act. Moving on, we have our second speaker. Can you introduce yourself and talk about your event, please?
Yes, of course. I will just try to be really quick because we are running out of time. I have to talk about what happened in Benin, and for my team, the first team that you can see on the pictures, because Benin has been really engaged on the open dialogue. We organized more than 4 events with 3 different teams, and I have been working with the first team. My name is Koto Daniel Danyo. I'm water and climate consultant. And for the first team, we try to organize 2 events, first in person and one other online event. And I will share with you maybe 3 more key learning that we learned from this experience. Not go through all the recommendations because all the team try to give some recommendation, but we as a co-lead of all the events that we organize, we have learned some things. And the first that I want to share with you is that we need to connect the main thematic of our open dialogue with the thematic at global level. Because this is not like only event that we organize on your own country. Like you have to have the main thematic be connected to the global issues, then you can make some progress toward, or you can also try to share what you have learned with other countries. That's why our first event was about reflection on the SB 58 session in June. We chose the main thematics related to this session that prepare the COP28. Then we try to have some discussion with you from Germany and you from Benin and other African countries, like have a global north and south discussion about the main thematic of the SB 58. And then we built some teams, some thematic group that work on key learning, key recommendation on each thematic. Also, how we can maybe make progress toward this thematic. That's the first thing that we want to share. And the second thing is that we need, when we organize an open dialogue, to really allow or maybe try to work with the government. I think my friend from the Cameroon share one experience like that. And in Benin, we have the chance that the Ministry of Living and in charge of transport and sustainable development was really engaged on our open dialogue, thanks to one person who is here right now, the coordinator of the Youth Delegate Program, Madame Constance Geneve. She really helped us to have the ministry engaged on the open dialogue, and they was present at the... So the ministry were present at our event, and they also received all the recommendations that youth from not only Benin, but also from the global north and the other part of Africa give on key thematics that will be discussed at COP right now. So we are sure that our main recommendation will be taken into account during the negotiation session that we have at the COP28. And also the last thing that we want to share is that our open dialogue should be really open. Like not only an issue of one organization, but many youth organizations. You can see on the next slide, please, that in Benin we have like 3 other teams that was being engaged. The second is Coliko Antoine Jose team in Benin, and we have the 3rd team that also organized other events at the north of Benin. That helped us to have like many different views, many different ideas from youth at north, center, and also south of Benin. So I don't want to take a lot of time because we are already running out of time. But just this is the 3 key main experience learning that I want to share with you. And then for the recommendation, we can still get in touch to share it with you. So thank you.
Thank you very much. We have like 4 minutes. That's going to be a challenge, but we can try to see. Yes. Yeah, we can go through. You know, we really had a lot of teams. Yeah. But we can show you, especially the pictures, I think, because you can see it's really diverse. So here we have bicycles provided to support community activists. Wonderful. Here we have using arts to reach broader audiences and talk about climate change and show climate change issues. This is also wonderful. Here again, reforestation, training volunteers, communal reforestation plans, very good, very, very local grassroots actions from our another team in Africa. Then a team in Egypt. The team in Egypt actually organized 15 events, so they were a really, really active team, and they covered a lot of topics. You can see just a few of them here, but they really created a huge community with a lot of people, and they were very successful in Egypt as well. Here we have a video, but this video is actually longer than 2 minutes. So what will happen after the 2 minutes, I don't know. So maybe we can leave it for the end and see. Now we have a team in Brazil, completely another region, another continent. They had a conference, Youth for Sustainable Development Conference. It lasted for something like 1 week. You can see.
Said we had a dialogue with.
Sorry?
The video.
Okay, okay. Yeah. Then we have another country, Burkina Faso, who talked about how climate change is affecting the environment and people's lives, about vulnerability, farmers, about also topics such like violence and population displacement, very important topics. Then we had a team in Togo as well, playing games to protect sea turtles and manage plastic waste on the beach. Wonderful work, also very local. Then we had a team in the Netherlands. Actually, it's me here on the picture because I live in the Netherlands and I contributed to this event on mostly just transition in Amsterdam. That was also a wonderful experience. Then we have South Sudan. They had an online event. They talked about a lot of important topics there as well. Then we have South Africa. As you can see, they had a lot of topics. They talked about adaptation, water and sanitation, strategy, and many other topics. You can see on the pictures that it also went well. And I think that's the end of it. So I don't know. We have 20 seconds left. Can we play the video or will it just cut off? I'm waiting for any feedback on this. If it is going to cut us off in 10 seconds, then I'm going to say thank you, everyone, and it was a wonderful event, and see you soon again, and we can talk also after it cuts us off. Thank you.